You're about to meet a woman with a remarkable story. Her name is Paige Barton, and she was born with so much stacked against her that many doubted she could ever achieve much of anything. Paige Barton, however, proved them wrong.
It is in Maine, where man frequently crosses paths with Mother Nature, that Paige Barton is composing a life.
I finally started to talk about some of the things that had happened.
Her instrument is her voice.
In the word disability is the word ability.
And after decades of trying to be heard, these days people listen to Paige, even when she doesn't speak. At the age of 44, she's on a crusade to change the way so-called normal people treat those with disabilities.
So many times we get looked at as the label and not as a person.
It's a uniquely personal mission, for if Paige had been born today, her life could have been dramatically different.
What happened might not have happened.
The truth was always in her eyes.
That's a school picture, too. That looks older. I don't know how old you were there.
I don't know.
Paige Barton arrived in the world on October 25th, 1951, the sixth daughter of a family of 10 children living in Pittsburgh.
There you are back there.
Yes.
The years from toddler to teen were at times rough. Paige often struggled to keep up in school.
I was slower than a lot of people with catching on to stuff. There were some teachers that weren't real patient with that.
She also found herself mercilessly picked on. Luckily, comfort was always close at hand.
I'll never forget, my brother used to stick up for me all the time, and he got into more fights over trying to stick up for me than anybody.
When she was fussing about the school, I said, oh, Paige, people laugh at me, too. It just, you know, but you felt so bad for her. She said, they say I look like a monkey. I remember her coming one day, and, oh, it just, you know, it made you sad.
Paige did look different, and she knew that somehow she was different. But it would not be until she reached her 30s that she would learn the real reason why.
She just needed more care, more attention, more medical supplies, more this, more that, more the other thing. What difference did it make what she had? It just was never mentioned. It wasn't going to get you anywhere to talk about it.
And so Paige received little explanation when, at the age of 15, she was sent away from home.
I was at school. I had gotten on the bus to go home, and my brother came out and told me to get off the bus, that my mom was there. I got off the bus and went in, and she told me to go and clean out my locker, that I wasn't going to be coming back.
For the next 15 years, from adolescence to adulthood, Paige was moved in and out of half a dozen homes and institutions for the mentally retarded.
Mr. McMurphy?
In the worst place, she saw disturbing scenes like those in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And she says as a teenager, she too withstood several shock treatments. Often scared, lonely, and confused, she tried to make sense of the situation.
As time went on, I got to thinking, oh, here I am with these people. Maybe I'm the same way they are.
Just what was wrong with Paige had gradually eclipsed everything that was right.
We didn't know anything until she was 17 months old, and they didn't say Down syndrome. See, they always said mongoloid, and they had a bad feel about that. The only thing I'd ever heard about mongoloids was they had slanted eyes and that they didn't live very long. See, they told us when she was little that they didn't think she would live very long.
Based on her features, Paige was assumed to have Down syndrome, a genetic disorder that usually causes mental retardation. At the time, children with Down were thought to be incapable of learning and were routinely institutionalized.
We just warehousing these mentally retarded children because we didn't really know how to deal with them.
Dr. Paul LaMarche, now a retired geneticist, first met Paige in the late 80s. His diagnosis would shock Paige and many who knew her. But given the era in which she grew up, there wasn't much that could have been done differently.
We didn't have any help for families about how to help them keep the child at home and care for them at home. And the families didn't have very much choice about it.
We did send Paige with the idea that she would be trained.
When I was a teenager, I worked with the little kids that were severely mentally retarded, that were in cribs, and we would go down and feed them their breakfast, clean them up, feed them their lunch. That was what we did. That was how we spent our days.
But she wanted to be spending her days in school. While her peers were experiencing social revolution in the 60s and 70s, Paige was fighting for a chance to finish high school.
I don't think anybody would have stopped Paige from pursuing an education.
Oh, come on!
Ultimately, Paige would benefit from sweeping changes in the mental health system. First, a 1975 law that required all handicapped children be educated. Then a push for removing those with disabilities from institutions. By the time she turned 30, Paige would have her first taste of freedom and would enter society with her high school equivalency diploma.
Not everybody has the tenacity to overcome all the no's.
Joanne Putnam, an educator who has studied people with Down, did a double take when she first saw Paige in the mid-'80s at the University of Maine in Farmington.
I thought, this may be a person with Down syndrome, but it can't be because she's carrying books.
Sure enough, Paige had managed to get herself into college.
I really can't say that I was greatly in favor of that because I thought it was hideously expensive and that she could do other work. But she was just determined. There was no stopping it. That was just the way it was going to be. So she did, and she graduated.
Paige Barton.
Good job, Kay! It was the most thrilling day of my life, actually, when I finally was able to achieve that bachelor's degree. It took 6 years, but I made it.
Paige credits Putnam, her college advisor and confidant, for much of her success. She hadn't seen her for 6 years, so we arranged a reunion in Presque Isle, Maine.
Hi. She's somebody that saw what I could do and believed in me and helped me believe in myself.
It was Putnam who persuaded Paige to share her story. Despite her self-doubt, Paige proved to be a natural public speaker.
Institutions are all right for some people, but they're not for all of us. And if you put a kid that doesn't belong in one, they're going to act like them when they get out.
This marked the beginning of Paige's career as an advocate for people with disabilities, work for which she would one day be honored at the White House.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
We saw Dr. LaMarche.
Yep, I do.
And he finally set the record straight.
Putnam also encouraged Paige to get tested for Down syndrome, since the medical technology hadn't been available when she was younger. But no one was prepared for the bombshell Dr. LaMarche would drop in 1988.
I never, from the very beginning, never thought she had Down syndrome. It was obvious that she didn't.
The test confirmed his suspicions. What Paige had was a genetic disorder called trisomy 18. An extra chromosome had caused her physical abnormalities. But had it affected her mind?
Her brain, we know, is normal, so whatever effects she might have psychologically are probably as a result of her institutionalization.
For 36 years, Paige had been labeled mentally retarded, only to find out she was not.
She could have done more mentally, you're saying.
Right.
Now you'll give me the guilt. I can see that. Well, you know, you didn't know it.
If only doctors had known then what they know now.
She has what we call a keyhole iris in her eye. If you look in her eye, you'll see, looks like a keyhole. That's one of the other signs we look for in a newborn. If we see something like that, that's never Down syndrome.
There's nobody to blame. Everybody did what they thought was the best thing. What's the sense in blaming somebody? You just go beyond what's happened and try to overcome those things and make the best that you can.
Paige is thought to be the oldest living person with trisomy 18. 95% of those born with the disorder die by the time they're 5. Although only 7% of Paige's cells are abnormal, the trisomy has seriously affected her hearing, kidneys, lungs, and now her legs. Add diabetes to that, and Paige Barton seems to be living solely on the strength of her faith and sense of purpose. It's 7:43. Brian's back in a moment with children's author R.L. Stine. That's right after these messages.
We're talking about the Paige Barton story, which is so uplifting.
And so sad on one hand.
But you think back to those times when so many kids were held back in school because we didn't know from learning disabilities. We didn't talk about learning disabilities. They were just considered slow and they were held back and kids made fun of them. It seems terrible in retrospect, doesn't it?
Terrible.
Yeah.
But she's amazing.
She is amazing. We're back after your local news.